favourites. Hello everyone, welcome to the NUFC 360 podcast. As you can see in the title, I think we're going to have a bit of a discussion / rant over Newcastle United and current ongoings within and behind the scenes at the club. It's been a controversial week, I think, Darren. I think that's safe to say, with obviously Longstaff going out the door, a key move falling through, speculation over Isak's future, a new technical director, I believe, but still no real progression in the transfer window. So it's been pretty frustrating overall, right?
Yeah, it hasn't been the finest week that we kind of hoped for. Obviously, the technical director, for me, came out the blue. I'm not even going to try to say his name. I'll probably murder it. But it does look as though he's got a strong background in the role that he had at Atlanta. So it's a positive move in terms of that for a bit more of the backroom staff. But as a fan, we would like to see some more signings through the door.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard a lot about this technical director. I mean, from what I understand, he'll kind of take the role that Dan Ashraf was doing. Is that, or is he a bit more on the data side of things? He's not necessarily driving the transfer strategy, as far as I can tell.
No, and I think looking at what the club have put out, I think that is more along the lines of what he's going to be doing. Just kind of lining up, helping up the data, the analysts, that sort of thing, the strategic overview, and all that sort of thing. So I think the sporting director is going to be probably leading more towards the transfers coming in with help from Nixon and Andy Howe as well.
And obviously we've had an outgoing this week as well, Sean Longstaff. Now I think this is obviously a one that is probably the right time and the right move for the player as well. I actually think he'll probably do quite well there. I think the pressure kind of taken off his shoulders of having to perform for Newcastle week in, week out. And you know, it might alleviate him a bit, and he might go on and do a little bit better at a team where, you know, his running and his work rate and basically what he does off the ball will be valued quite a lot. But yeah, I think just wish him the best. But I think ultimately the biggest concern for me, and I mean, I'll get your thoughts on Longstaff in a second, is if you look at since January now, that's 4 first-team players that we've actually lost in Almiron, Wilson, Kelly, and Longstaff. And I know, admittedly, they're not the best players in the world, but ultimately the problems that we were having last season, where we were playing even less with our squad depth, going into this season, it just looks an absolute mess at the minute now, because that's 3 players that we're now out down. And in fact, if you look at just since the end of the season, we're 1 player down as well, aren't we? In the sense that we've lost Wilson, Longstaff, and only brought Alanga in. So the squad's actually looking thinner. So I guess 2-part question. What's your thoughts on Longstaff leaving? Right move? And then the second part is what do we need to do in this window to turn it around? Because it is looking a little bit concerning, isn't it?
Well, the second part to that is a kind of dealer's choice, really, isn't it? Everyone will have their own view on that. But just regards to Longstaff, in terms of the timing of the move, I think it's ideal. I think it came aware to everybody that he didn't seem happy towards the end of the season. He probably knew he wasn't going to play, and he didn't seem to have his same energy in and around when he got his opportunities. I think Leeds have got themselves, personally, I think they've got themselves a bargain for 12 million quid. Premier League known player, considering you look at some of the fees that are going around for players that have got a year left on a contract. Obviously, and Buemo's went to Manchester United for that. But I think for me, Longstaff goes with my best wishes. He's lived the dream. He's lived the dream. I would have loved to have done what he got to do. You know, I think one of his highlights was obviously the PSG game, and obviously being part of the squad that lifted the trophy, the Carabao Cup. So
yeah,
I think it's positive stuff.
Yeah, I think it's the right time for him. And what about the window then? What needs to be done? Because I mean, it's not just physically signing the players. It's just, I mean, like the title says, what the hell is going on behind the scenes? You know, there just seems to be no clarity, no direction, no plans. You know, there doesn't really. I mean, we're bouncing from Akite now to Johan Wissa, and you know, Wissa's probably not going to happen because Brentford have just sold the best player. Not going to sell another attacking option, either. So, I mean, what is the plan with Newcastle? I mean, what do we need to do? Where and how many positions do we need to sign in?
It's $1 million question, really, Ryan. It's one of those where, as a fan, I would have thought by this time before we started travelling over to the Middle East, we would have had at least 2 or 3 new players in, first teamers, and we have lost, as you said earlier, we've lost 4 first team squad members from the start of last season up until now. Yes, we've added Elanga, but the squad wasn't exactly deep in Premier League level strength, really. We just need a little bit more clarity. It just looks very amateurish. We don't seem to have any real targets. Like, we've got a target and we'll stick to him. We can't seem to do multiple deals at the same time. We focus so much on one player that when that doesn't go through, we've missed out on 2 or 3.
Exactly.
So we just look very amateur at the moment, unfortunately.
And I just don't understand what the club strategy is with some of these deals as well. I mean, you've been chasing this Trafford deal now for 18 months, 2 years, and every time it just takes them so long to get a deal over the line, and by the time they do start to try and get that deal done, other teams are just coming in and nipping us in because they're offering more wages, probably more attractive proposition for some of the guys in terms of the ones that want to live in London, etc. I mean, if you look at our window, we've missed out on pretty much every single target. The thing that's annoying me is why have the club not got a plan B, a plan C, a plan D? Like, I understand Paul Mitchell's left the club, but you can't tell me he hasn't sat down with that scouting team, data team, recruiting team, manager, and they hadn't had a list of targets going in this window, because they were never going to get their first targets. And this is the problem Newcastle are in right now, where they're trying to recruit players that are obviously very good players and are getting interest from other clubs, over the traditional Big Six clubs, and they're going to choose them over Newcastle. Newcastle don't have the pull that these clubs have. I mean, and some fans that'll disagree with me and say, well, you know, we're a massive club and all this. Yeah, we're a big club in Newcastle, but I mean, these guys, you know, these João Pedros, they don't grow up wanting to play for Newcastle, do they? They've grown up watching teams like Chelsea, teams like Manchester United. I mean, Mbeumo's choosing Manchester United with no European football over Newcastle. So the club knows this, and know that they're going to be in battle for these players, and they should have been prepared. They should have a list of players. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But I mean, ultimately, they might be working their asses off behind the scenes for all we know. And they might just be getting extremely unlucky. But we're seeing nothing. And I think the squad depth is really worrying. I mean, one of the things we didn't even touch on there was getting battered 4-0 off Celtic at the weekend as well. And I mean, I know that was
yeah.
It's a reason. First of all, now, I'm not. You never look too much into these things, in my opinion, because they've had 5 preseason games already. You know, they've got a Champions League qualifier coming up. They're 3-4 weeks in, probably on from where we are right now. And it would be probably a completely different game if we played them in 3 weeks. But you saw like some of the players on Saturday. I mean, he's given a run out to some of these academy lads. I'm never going to make it in the first team. And what's the point? Like, you know, these Ben Parkinsons and Joe Whites and stuff like that. And look, I'm all for trying to bring the lads through and give them time. And it might sound harsh me writing them off, because I haven't watched them enough, but they don't look like they're going to make it at Newcastle anytime soon, do they? So the squad depth just isn't there. You know, I think we saw it, and the drop off from the first 11, which is a strong 11, to the bench, absolutely startling. I don't think there's a bigger drop off in the league in terms of quality. From
no, not at all.
Even the clubs around, the lower clubs have more options than we do in terms of they can switch things up tactically. We're so one-dimensional because we've only got the players that are good at the starting 11, and once that happens, then we're hooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the starting 11, I think you compare it to a lot of the other teams around them. It's a Champions League level team. But going back to the transfer situation, I think that we do struggle with the whole legacy thing, and I'm with you, Ryan. I think that we are a big club within Newcastle, within the Northeast. We haven't got the history of a Chelsea, of a Liverpool, of the traditional Big Six. Top 4, really. I don't really agree with the Big Six, but I think that when you've got Mbeumo, as you pointed out before, going to Manchester United with no European football, that is because of the legacy of Manchester United. That's for him to say. Obviously, I think the expected wages of £250,000 a week, which we were never going to pay, sway him. And look at the Pedro deal as well, living in London. And I think you look at even the Trafford deal. Why can't we, now that we've sold Longstaff, why can't we just pay that little bit more for Trafford and get him over the line? I don't really understand the amortization of the transfer fee of an academy product. I don't know how it works, but I think apparently his Longstaff's fee equates to a £50 million player that we can buy. That's for people far smarter than me to work out. But we just don't seem to have a plan. You would think that they would have, especially for a striker, you would have 4 or 5 names on there, and you'd work through your top target, and you'd go down, and you'd touch base with clubs going, and you'd gauge interest. You're not going to reach out to a club like a Frankfurt if you don't think there's a possibility of it happening anywhere. It's not Football Manager. It's a real game. It's a professional business, and for us, that we just seem so. It's like we're in the big time, but we don't expect to be in the big time. We're so happy to be there that we're just kind of standing and watching everything happen around us rather than being proactive. And the signings that we have made, obviously we haven't made a lot recently, but the signings when we initially got took over, they've all done a job and been successful for us. They've done what they needed to do. So when we do make signings, it's positive, but we're just not making enough at the moment. The squad depth really, really worries me going into the season. And I do think that we will sign a couple more players at least, but I just worry on how much better they're going to be than what we've got.
I think you're spot on, and I think we need minimum 3 to 4 players. For me personally, I think it's been a complete mess. The window, like you say, the lad should be in there before the start of preseason. They should have the preseason to get to know the team, get to know how's quite demanding as a manager, and you've seen it in the past. Players take time to get used to him, get used to his system, but at least having the preseason under the belt would have them better versed. Whereas now, what we're going to be doing is, what the looks of things is, if we're going to be panic buying towards the end of the window, aren't we? And then the lads are going to need 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks to get up to speed. So we're really pretty much going the season with the exact same squad. And my worry is, I think that Eddie Howe's brilliance is just papering over the cracks. I mean, there's only so long you can
Agreed.
some of these players as well on the pitch, because I mean, how much more can these lads do? I mean, these current group, and I mean, they're a memorable group, and we'll always remember them. But they've kind of achieved what they wanted to achieve, that group of players, didn't we? They wanted to win a trophy, wanted to play Champions League, and it felt like finishing in the Champions League was the start of kind of a new phase, really. This is where we say, right, lads, you have been brilliant for us, And I'm talking about maybe your Jacob Murphys. I'm not saying sell them, the Longstaff, Wilsons, and all that sort of stuff. But, how can they keep performing to that level season and season and season over again? You've got a centre-back in Shaw who's 33, 34, Burns 33. We haven't got a backup striker. And I just think Howe's being let down massively by people behind the scenes. And I don't think it's worth playing the blame game either, because I think the problem is everyone looks for someone to blame or a certain individual to blame. And when it goes well, all rosy and whatever, but they seem to want to blame, it's Howe or whatever. It's this guy or it's Howe. And I don't think anyone...
PIS.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who takes the blame? I think collectively it's a mess. I think, obviously, I don't know if it's Howe being stubborn with his targets, whether it's the board, they just haven't got themselves in place. I mean, I know this is well documented. I mean, Darren Eales, I hope wishing he recovers well and all that sort of stuff. But, they announced that now nearly a year ago. They haven't replaced him. That Mitchell, again, we've lost a sporting director, and are we ever replaced him yet? No. We're losing him right before the start of the summer transfer window, where, he hasn't actually signed a player, or you would think this is where he starts to get his players in and starts pitching his ideas and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, we can go on for hours about this. I think ultimately, like I say, I think the players are being let down by the club. I've got another question for you now, just kind of going slightly off topic. And I guess this maybe comes into communication as well, but there was tickets released today, wasn't there? Or at least the public open for the members, I believe, for the Liverpool game. And another thing which has annoyed a lot of people, and myself included, is £58 cheapest ticket for a game of football in level 7. And I think it's an absolute disgrace. And I just think they're ripping off the fans. I think all football's going this way. I saw the Villa Newcastle game. I mean, the cheapest tickets in the whole end were £81 as well. And I think this is just football in general. I can't stand the way it's going in terms of PSR and that just, what having to do this, and the club's solution to raising more money is by ripping off the fans, and I think it's crap. What's your thoughts on the ticket prices? Because I think it's.
Well, I agree with you, to be fair, Ryan, and I was quite happy to see that email come through saying that the ballot was open. For me as well, it was like the beginning of the football season, just around the corner, and like I'm a member. My two sons are a member, so if I'm successful, that's an expensive day out in level 7. Not that anywhere in St James's for me it gives poor view, but you would expect for that amount of money to be a little bit closer to pitch side. I understand where the club are coming from in terms of the costings of it. It's our first home game. It's a night game. Liverpool as well, the opposition. All these sort of things get factored in. But you went to the Villa one before, and I think that was a similar price to when they played Bayern Munich in their first Champions League game last season. And I just think that there's a lot of tourist fans now, and I think that clubs are looking at that and thinking, well, we would rather get a tourist to come in and spend £200 on a ticket that will just come in for that one game, rather than have the increased season ticket holders or more of the members coming in and trying to price them out. If that's going to be the price for the tickets throughout the season, I'm not going to be able to afford to. Not that I'm going to be successful in every ballot. I wasn't last season, but I'm not going to be able to afford to go to all those games. I can't justify spending that money to go and watch a game of football, especially with my two sons. And I don't want to come to a situation where I have to take one game and take the next game. I think it's unfair because there's no guarantee that, again, I'll get tickets. So I just think there's a lack of touch from the owners of all football clubs. It's just they look at it as purely as a business, and that's what it is. We are a business. It is a business, but it's also an entertainment sport. If you've got thousands of tourist spectators there, they don't know the songs. They're not really feeling the situation. Right? They might know the players, but they won't care about them like we do as supporters. They won't. And I just think it's just going to affect everything. And yeah, I'm not happy about it. I understand where the club are coming from, but I think they could have knocked a tenner off that, under £50. Just the optics of it looks a little bit better. But £58 is, it's slightly ridiculous. If it was a Champions League game, I would maybe understand it, but yeah, I think it's a bit steep personally.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on about this for ages, and I think what it shows for me is I think the club are kind of just viewing the fans at the minute as just a money printing machine, and I think that too many people just sit there and soak up and go, well, we don't pay these prices, we're never going to be able to sign players and all this. It's a load of rubbish. There's plenty of other things the club could be doing. They keep floating the PSR excuse, and I understand it's a closed shop and the system's broken and all this, but there's more the club could do. They're not doing anything about it. Rather than sitting here and having to sell players or raise ticket prices and affecting the fans who are working class fans who want to go to games and all this sort of stuff. Get a training ground sponsor. All this. Where's the commercial deals? They've completely dried up. What's Peter Silverstone doing behind the scenes? How much? You say they're like £20 for 10,000 seats. I mean, how much money is that? It's like 400 grand. It's pennies to you. You know what I mean? I might be off there with my maths. £20, but whatever. It's less than £1 million. It's pennies to Newcastle. But at the same time, I just think they really have got to be careful here, because they are starting to, in my opinion, appear out of touch with the fans. And it goes back to, again, a new stadium. And, when people saying, oh, this is what we need, to sell more tickets and progress. But like you say, it's just going to turn into a corporate machine. That's all it'll be. There's not going to be loads of extra tickets there for the fans unless you pay out of your pocket to go there, and heavily out of your pocket. And I think it's a sad, sad day if it gets to a point where dad can't take two of his sons to a football game because he can't afford it, because the club have priced them out of it. And that's not necessarily aimed at you; it's aimed at anyone in general. But you know, what I
No,
mean?
no, it is. It's right though, Ryan. It is because it might get to that situation if those prices stay like that. And I'm fortunate that I've got a relatively well-paid job, but I can't justify that every other weekend. Looking at potentially, if it does stay, let's say £50 a ticket, that's £150. Never mind food, never mind drink, never mind a bit of the travel costs.
Yeah.
You could be looking at maybe £500 a month that I have to pay to go to watch 2 games of football. Like that's £6,000 a year. And I just think that, like, I'm going to be honest, I'd rather put that money into a nice 2-week holiday for my kids and my wife and go somewhere and just sit on a beach and relax. And I know there'll be people listening to this now going, oh no, I'd rather do this. I'd rather go to St. James's, blah, blah. And I get that. I really do. But I think that football in general is on the cusp. It's on the cusp of going so far to the left that it's going to lose what it's about, and it'll become very much like Americanized. They'll have halftime shows. There'll be not a lot of atmosphere, and it'll just kill the sport. It'll kill the sport.
Yeah, and I think and again, I think it will get to a point where people will start to get sick of it, because ultimately, like you say, you're asking us to invest so much money into the club, and it's kind of framed as this, help the club out, and this will help us invest more into the players and stuff. But they're not investing in the field, the product on the pitch, really, are they? And ultimately, you can't expect people to keep flashing and dishing out their money, and if you're not going to invest in it. And I think that they are playing on the loyalty of Newcastle fans a little bit right now, in terms of, we can get away with this sort of stuff, and the fans won't say anything because they love the football club so much. But I think it needs to be called out. Hence why I've called it out. And yeah, I think, I've kind of covered, I think, pretty much all I wanted to cover there. There's still time to turn this round ultimately. That's what I want to say to kind of close out from my point of view, and then I'll ask you what you think. But there's still, 5-6 weeks, whatever, left in the window. They can get 3 or 4 players in, and they can turn it around and try and get a bit of positivity going into the new season. But it's a mess. It needs to be called out. It's been called out, and it's been a really disappointing summer for Newcastle.
Yeah, I agree. As I said earlier, I think they just look a little bit rudderless at the moment. There just doesn't seem to have any direction. You look at the money that we've got from Longstaff, you look at the money we've got from Kelly, Almiron, that's basically paid for Elanga. Never mind any of the money that we got from finishing. I think we got about £165 million for TV and our final position in the Premier League. So where's that money gone? Where's that being used? But I do believe that we will have players brought in. It just, unfortunately, you look at Howe's final press conference at the end of the season, and speed is key. Speed is key. I want them in before pre-season, and we had one in. And I'm going to be blunt here as well. I think we're fortunate that we got him in, because if Spurs had made the move for Gibbs White before we did, that might have threw another spanner in the works, and we might have been looking at another Gay situation. But I am an optimistic fan. I do believe we'll have at least 3 in. I'm not sure on the positions. I'd like a striker, centre back, and centre mid. If we could pick an ideal 3, that would be my choice. But yeah, it's not looking good so far. But as you said before, Ryan, there's plenty of time to turn it around. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. And let's end it on a positive note and say, although we have had a bit of a rant there, I think we're ultimately speaking the mind of a lot of people out there as well who are thinking the same thing. So I guess, let's turn it around, and hopefully we can have another good season. But yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Let us know in the comments what you think around the situation at Newcastle. What needs to be done? What do we need to see more from the club? Are me and Darren being too harsh on the situation, and do we need to chill out a bit and let the club do what they need to do to get us ready? Because ultimately, they haven't let us down yet since the new ownership came in on the pitch. All right. Cheers for listening, everyone, and have a good evening.